Hit it, Fergie. All right, well, today's the day we're going to be putting this motor back in this car, and hopefully at the end of this video we're going to hear it run. But first we're going to be swapping over the last few things that we got parts on before we put it back in the car, and probably going to vacuum out the engine bay just from all the dirt from the last race we were at. So, but yeah, thanks for everyone that's been tuning in so far on this little mini series, and I got to thank the sponsor on the car again, B&B Pumping and Portables. They've been helping us out with it. So, all right. So first off, we're going to take off the thermostat. It's just three 10mm bolts. I only show taking two off here because the third one was rusted on, and I had to take a vice grip and try to pry it out. I got the new thermostat in and just going to snug these bolts back up with the ratchet. I also did take some emery cloth and try to clean up the surface between the thermostat and the block just to help create a good seal. Next up, I'm going to take the VTEC solenoid off to get at one of the screens and change that out. This should be three 10mm bolts. Here's what that first screen looks like after taking the solenoid off. I'm just going to use a pick to try to peel it out. Some of the old gasket material was still sticking to it, so I was just trying to clean it off the best that I could to help get a good seal with the new one. I did the same thing here with trying to clean up the mating surface between the VTEC solenoid and the block, and took a razor blade and some emery cloth to try to clean up that surface so we don't get any leaks. And I'm going to get this snug back down so that I can take a larger socket and take off this other component of the solenoid and break that loose. This gasket is just a simple O-ring, so I'm going to pop the old one out and put the new one in. So I get that torqued down and think I'm about finished up. And forget I have to put the heat shield back on over it. And then the last screen is actually found underneath the power steering pump and belt tensioner pulley. So I have to take those components off to get to that. Here's the cover for that screen. Should be just a couple 10mm bolts to pop out. Same thing, I'm just going to use the pick and try to get that out. Scrape off any of the gunk that might be left over. Clean up that surface a little bit. Pop the new screen in. and reinstall. Give things a quick vacuum. Well, we should have everything swapped out now on this motor, so now we can start putting it in the engine bay here and get the motor mounts hooked up and then start with all the wiring and everything else. So I first got the front mount bolt put back in first, and then I start working on the transmission mount, but I did end up having to replace this bolt because it did not thread correctly. Here's a top-down view of getting the bolt put in the very back motor mount. And then get the exhaust hooked back up to the manifold. Since I'm already down under the car, I'm going to get the transmission shifter cables hooked back up and reinstalled. Later on, this part is actually what's going to give me an issue. Here's where I had to put the new bolt in the transmission mount, just since the old bolt would not screw in properly, so I had to drill it out and put a new bolt in. And here's the last motor mount on the passenger side. With that done, now we can address the rat's nest of wiring and start to get that laid back into place and start plugging things back in where they need to be. This wire already had a repair on it before, and I noticed that it had some corrosion and breaks in the wire, so I just ended up replacing that. Next, we'll get the radiator put back in and get the lower coolant hose hooked back up, and then also the transmission coolant lines as well. Next, I'm going to work on putting the intake back on and just trying to clean up this surface as well, just so we get a nice seal and don't get any vacuum leaks. We'll get the throttle body hooked back up and plugged back in and hook up any hoses that are running to that. And then we'll get the throttle cables strung back out and hook up the power steering hose back to the pump. Here I'm hooking back up the coolant lines that run to the heater inside the cab. We do have one winter race that we like to run, and this is one nice thing to keep in the car for heat. working on getting some of the evap lines hooked back up, but I ended up finding out that I needed to swap one of the old parts off the old motor back onto this new one for the lines to fit. I did forget to install the coolant reservoir, so I had to take back off this part and reinstall that. Next, I'm going to get the battery plate reinstalled. Reinstall the aftermarket intake. Next, throw a battery back in and start working on reinstalling the axles so I can top off the transmission fluid and not leak any of it out. All right, I think we're pretty close now. I got all the axles put back in and all the wiring and radiator installed and intake and all the good stuff plugged back in. So I think the last bit that I need to do is throw some coolant in it, check the trans level, fluid level, and then hook the battery up, and then I think we might be ready to try to start it. All right, I think we're ready to give it a try to start it. We were running into a little issue that I think I know what the problem is now, but I think I broke the shifter cable when I was pulling the motor out, and then it was giving me problems with the shifter and the lights coming on in the dash. But I think I at least got it temporarily in place now for it so that it knows that it's in park where should allow it to start. So we'll give it a try. Hit it, Fergie. That was a big relief just to hear that run for that little bit, just to know that at least it fires, and it sounded decent when it ran, but there's still a lot of stuff that we got to check over with bleeding out the coolant system, and same with the power steering, and checking the transmission fluid and all that stuff yet. But that was just a huge relief to finally hear that run. So but time will only tell once the first race comes here in April, that we plan on taking it to. So, but yeah, hopefully it'll turn out good and can not have to worry about this anymore. So, but thanks for watching, and hope you like the videos.